do it much better. Yeah.
Oh, we'll keep trying.
I know.
Yeah, don't curse it. Don't.
Knock on wood. I did that the last time. Down for another 3 or 4 months.
But thank you.
All the time. From the time I get up.
You're gonna come to the meal on Wednesday. Oh, she's shaking her finger at you.
What meal?
The like, supper,
Supper?
yeah, and service somewhere. After the supper.
I don't think Dwayne comes out at night.
And it's a wonderful Wednesday, she feels it fine. You missed a good one this last Wednesday, Ash Wednesday. Did you know it was Ash Wednesday?
Oh. Used to be.
Mhm.
All the stores, I see people,
Oh yeah, I saw one.
that's all I see.
I saw one on Wednesday. Yeah, that's it. You notice how many were on the news shows though, all the Congress people and whatever, and Rubio and a whole bunch of others. Well, a whole bunch of politicians. Yeah, well, big old crosses on there. Yeah, but no, I
Is that charity?
no, but no, I went to the store when I went to Vaughn Safeway that afternoon, and I saw one person.
I ran into one at Walmart. From Walmart, went to the smoke shop to get me cigarettes. So I didn't come in. Went into Safeway,
Yeah, Fifi.
trying to find my daughter and son. I'm going down one aisle. She said, oh, she says, it's Ash Wednesday, isn't it? I said, yes, it is.
Oh, my.
She looked at her husband, she says, I need to get to church. He blew up.
Oh, is that right? Oh, geez.
Getting out of here.
Wow.
As I was checking out, he's there walking, going around pushing the cart. He says, have you seen that damn wife of mine?
And I have to grab.
Wow.
So when I came up the next aisle, I seen her heading out the door. Came back in. She's taking the cart.
She left him stranded. That's pretty funny. Oh. What you looking for?
Nothing, just looking around, it looks like these people are cleaning up a whole lot better.
Oh, yeah.
All vacuumed up. And everything.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
Oh, me.
You could sleep with me, but.
Good one, Dwayne. No, you don't, yours doesn't either.
Around you.
No, like.
I haven't either. Have you?
Have what?
Dog license?
You should have this wing pulled up like that.
Did I? No.
No,
No, I didn't.
I always thought it was down before, wasn't it? Seems
I
later.
don't remember, tell you the truth.
It definitely not. But- Oh, is that was the chip?
She is chipped.
Yeah, mine too.
She is chipped.
And I did not have.
That way if it gets away and at least
Yeah.
people can.
I-
She is chipped.
Oh, yours would never run away from you.
If she wants to run away, she can go. If she can find somebody better than me.
Oh, let's put one of these in there.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, it's, I have a.
That's really good.
So she was in remission until she turned 7. She got leukemia again and cancer. And she died a few years later.
Very good.
She was getting.
Come on, people.
Do we have a contact person or a pad or something for things that need to be replaced? We're out of toilet paper. Well, that's good.
Toilet paper. Well, that's not something they supply. That's something the ladies buy.
I know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right here. Right here.
Okay.
P. There you go.
That'll do it. You think?
I think they'll see that.
We'll see if we'll fucking scratch their heads.
Yes.
It's not all anywhere.
You're spoiling this by heating up your,
Yeah, one guy showed up
Not there.
Oh, well, they're better that way.
I know it is. It gives it a lot more flavor.
Yeah, yeah,
Leave it.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
He wasn't going.
Yeah.
He worked as a gardener for that greenhouse down there in Wilcox. And he picked up all the tomatoes that they were getting ready to throw out because they couldn't ship them. Too far right. Bring up here to sell.
Mhm.
You had 3 other people there, but they were going down.
Please shut up, Dave. Please just shut up. You like to run your mouth. Come on, Christy. One more. Come on, one more. Susan, 2 more. Shit. Shit, 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 shit. Shit, 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 shit. Shit. Shit, 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 shit. Okay, we're gonna just get going here because
Anyone heard from?
yes, I will.
Oh, you will.
I will give a report.
Thank
Okay. Bruce called this morning and said he was doing fine. I talked to his brother the day of the surgery. His brother called and said surgery went very well. Bruce also said it went very well, and he is doing fine. He was up and walking today, so he's fine. Wanted me to tell you that he's all doing well. I think he was still in ICU today, but I think they're moving him to a regular room later today. I think later today. Yeah, yeah, you can get one. Yeah, yeah. That's always the big trick.
Older brother, younger brother, you know.
It's a brother from Milwaukee.
Yeah, I
think he
don't
only
know.
has the one brother.
Yeah.
Is he older or younger?
I don't know. Tell you the truth, I don't know.
He's
I think younger, but
He's young, he is young.
yeah, I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. And Carolyn's doing okay, and that's why she's not here, and Kalita's with her, of course.
And it's Colita's birthday today.
Yes, it is. And I got a message from Christy. She can't make it today. Something come up in her family, so she's taking care of that today. So I know where everybody pretty much is. So and
Then she brought her big brother, holy cow.
yeah, Thomas, yeah, he's a big fella. Takes after his father. His father's a big guy too. Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to roll right into it. We're going to get done a couple of sections of this as we move on through the life of Christ. We're in the middle of his years of ministry, year and a half, almost 2 years into his ministry now. Very active part of his ministry. He's doing a lot, or at least, let's put it this way, a lot is recorded in this section of time. This is the second, if you look back a couple pages, you'll see this is the second long period of time that is focused on the Galilean ministry. So this is the northern part of the ministry. You can always divide Jesus' ministry up in different ways. You can divide it by time. A lot of scholars like to divide it, Bible scholars like to divide it by Passovers. From first to second, second to third, and third to fourth. So three years, 4 Passovers. Some like to divide it by regions, like Galilee, Judea, Perea, and the Decapolis. They can do it that way. Others divide it just into 3 years and use the visits to Jerusalem. But this section here, where we're in Luke chapter 7 area, and we're going to be in Luke chapter 7 for a couple of these sections here, a couple of these incidents, is, as I say, the middle, right the middle, year and a half to 2 years of his ministry. All right, so we're going to look at a couple of things. First of all, we're going to look at the raising of the widow's son of Nan. And then, which we talked a little bit about last time, but I have an arrow here, it says to continue discussion on the notes. So it means that we probably read this section. Or no, we haven't read 11. No, we haven't read 11. So let's do that. Let's read 11 to 17. Let's read that first, and then we'll go from there. Luke 11, 7:11. Soon afterwards, Jesus went to a city called Nain, and his disciples were going along with him, accompanied by a large crowd. Again, one of the things that's very noticeable about this period of Jesus' ministry is that he has not only the 12, we've already talked about the naming of the 12, and he has the 70 disciples, and then he has another about 50 after that, making it 120 that are real close. They have left everything. They have left their jobs. They have left their homes. Some of them have brought families with them, their wives or their children or whatever, and they're traveling with Jesus. So when you hear Jesus and his disciples, it usually means that Jesus is with about 130 to 140 people. That's a pretty good crowd. And then when it says on top of that, when it says crowds, we're talking literally hundreds more. And when he actually stops someplace, then people gather, and then we're talking thousands. Okay, so this is kind of the hallmark of this period of Jesus' ministry. He's got a lot of followers at this point. Thousands, hundreds and thousands. So a large crowd. As he approached the gate of the city, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a sizable crowd from the city was with her. So here's another crowd. So we've got even more people. Who knows how many at this point. When the Lord saw her, he felt compassion for her and said, do not weep. Now, you wonder at this point, again, who's writing this? Luke is writing this. Luke is writing this long after the fact. Luke was not in the group of the 12. He was not an apostle. We don't think he was one of the 70. He may have been one of the 120 or 150. That's possible. But it's also possible he was not eyewitness to the events, and that these are the memories of, say, somebody like Peter or John, or it could just be pure inspiration from the Holy Spirit. So it is, of course, God who knows that this woman is a widow. I mean, you see a funeral procession. You don't know unless you know the individual, you don't know the particulars. You know, we see a line of cars coming out of Hatfields over here, and unless we know the person at the funeral, we don't know whether the lady's sitting in the hearse, you know, in the first car. We don't know if there's a widow or not, or a daughter. We don't know that, and we don't know, and even if we know that we don't know whether that's her only son, you know, in the hearse or whatever. So this information, these details, of course, are supplied either by an eyewitness that Luke knows, or supplied by the Holy Spirit. Okay, either one. The Lord saw her and said, do not weep. And he came up and touched the coffin. Now, it's not a coffin. Jews don't use coffins. In Palestine, they don't even use coffins at all. Jews will use coffins in this country, and I don't know about Europe, to tell you the truth, but I know in this country they will use coffins, but they don't use coffins in Palestine. Neither the Jews nor the Arabs. The Muslims or the Jews, either one, don't use coffins because, well, you don't need them. So this is a bier, B-I-E-R, a bier, which is no more really than a pallet. Okay, that's all it is. And usually the body is covered with a shroud. That's all. Okay, so it's not a coffin. Anyway, he touched the coffin, and the bearers came to a halt, and he said, young man, I say to you, arise. The dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. And fear gripped them all, and they began glorifying God, saying, a great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people. This report concerning him went out over all Judea and the surrounding district. Okay, so notice a couple of things here. Jesus' first comments. He sees the situation, and of course, as God, he knows the situation. So he knows the woman's a widow. He knows that this is her only son who has died of what? We do not know. We have no idea what it was, whether it was a disease, whether it was an accident, whether he was in the military, whatever. We don't know that. All right. Notice his first words are. Would these be the first words you would expect? So Jesus walks up and he sees a funeral procession coming out of town. And he makes his way to the main person, in this case, the widow. And the first words out of his mouth, you would think would be what? What would you think the first? You probably wouldn't think these would be the first words. What would be the first words? I mean, put yourself in his sandals for a minute. What do you say? You see this going on. You see it's a funeral procession. You see the dead body. You see the mother walking next to or in front of the dead body. What do you say? Yeah. First words out of your mouth are, gee, it's too bad. I'm really sorry to see this. This is really sad. And especially if you're being God, of course, oh, wow, you're a widow. You don't have a husband at home. Okay, nobody walking with you. And no brothers, no sisters, no nobody. You're all alone. the first words out of your mouth are, "Oh, gee, I'm really sorry. I feel sorry for you. Sorry for you." He doesn't say that. He just says, "Hey, stop crying." Some translations put it that way. Some translations will say, "Stop crying. Don't be crying." Okay? The Greek is rather emphatic. In other words, the Greek has emphasis. Right? Don't do that. What are you doing that for? Okay? You might even say, "Why are you crying?" Okay? Well, he's being kind of gruff, even, you might even say here. Right? Do not weep. All right? And he doesn't say anything else. He doesn't say, "Do not weep because I'm going to do so-and-so." Do not weep, or like he said with Jairus' daughter, your daughter is only sleeping. He didn't say that. He just says, "Do not weep." And then he walks up and he does something really fantastic here. He comes up and touches the covenant. You don't do that. You do not do that. Right? In that part of the world, you don't want to do that, because in that part of the world, and in Jewish law even, okay, the dead are unclean. All right? Ceremonially, religiously, they are unclean. Like the people who are carrying the bier, okay, the bier, the pallet, okay, they're unclean. They're unclean till the next day. Right? And so, nobody else wants to be that. Nobody else wants to be, cut off from society for a day or longer, maybe. They want to be able to be with their friends. They want to be able to eat and sit down with people and talk with people, whatever. So, if you're going to be a pallbearer in those days, that meant you gave up, a couple days of your life, not just a couple hours or whatever. You gave up a couple of days, so it was a big deal. So for somebody who's not connected, who doesn't have a job at the funeral, like a pallbearer, okay, for somebody like that to come up and touch the pallet, okay, is unheard of. You don't do that. If you touch the pallet, you become unclean. All right? You become unclean. So that was kind of amazing. And the bearers came to a halt. Well, of course they did. Some stranger is going to come up and touch the burial pallet, okay? You go, "Whoa, what is this? Do you know what you're doing, you idiot, you moron? What's the matter with you?" Okay? So kind of, and then Jesus says, "Young man, I say to you, arise." Again, he doesn't tell him, "Come alive." He doesn't give an order to do that. He doesn't say, "Come back from the dead," or whatever. He just says, he speaks to him. How can you speak to the dead? Well, more than that, when Jesus speaks to him, is he dead? No. No, he's not dead. You don't talk to dead people. Okay? So immediately when he touched the pallet, what happened? Life returned to the guy. Right? So he's talking to somebody who's alive. Now he's the guy, I don't know, the guy, I don't know if he's maybe asleep or what, but so when he's talking to the guy's alive. Okay? Okay? So the dead man sat up. Well, he's not a dead man anymore. But I guess Luke and the Holy Spirit didn't know what else to say here. They should have said young man, but they didn't. They said young man. The dead man sat up and began to speak. And here's another interesting thing. Why don't they record what he said? What would he say? I mean, really, think about it. What would he say? Where am I? Okay, all right, okay. Or, I'm alive. What else? What happened? Yeah, last thing I knew, I was, farming on the South 40, Or what else? How about, oh, rats, I'm back. Crud. Yeah. I'm gonna die all over again one of these days. Crud. What's with that? Like Lazarus, right? You know, if I was Lazarus, I'd have complained. Excuse me, I was enjoying heaven.
Right.
You brought me back here. What the heck? I don't. Yeah, right. I saw. Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, we would like to know what this guy said, but it is not recorded for us, of course. And Jesus gave him back to his mother. Does this mean that he had no other family? Well, probably. Didn't have a wife, didn't have kids or anything like that. Maybe he wasn't even married, probably. So he's a young man, probably in that middle area, like we talked about, remember about Joseph, where the girls are betrothed when they're 5, 6 years old. And then as soon as they get to be 12, 13, 14, then they're married off. But the guys that they're marrying very often are in their 20s or even 30s because they have gone and got a place to live and they're building their business, or their farm or whatever, their herd, their animals, whatever like that. So there's usually this big gap. So he's probably in that middle area. He's bar mitzvahed, so he's a man, but he's a young man still. He's probably somebody who's trying to still eke out his place in the world, and he hasn't gotten married yet and things like that. So that's why he gave him back to him. He may be still living at home. That's very possible also. And fear gripped them all. Why? You see somebody brought back from the dead, I mean, wouldn't you say, wow? Wouldn't you say, gee, that's pretty cool? Why fear? Why fear? Oh. Somebody brings somebody back from the dead, it's like, whoa! Yeah, it's kind of like when well, yeah, they probably dropped the poor guy. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, poor guy probably got dropped on the ground. But yeah, it's like Peter when Jesus stilled the storm instantly like that, and Peter went, "Oh, get away from me! I'm a sinner, man. You shouldn't be standing too close to me." Yeah. So yeah, either yeah, you're seeing a dead person come back to life. You're just scared in that sense, or you're looking at Jesus and you're going, "Man, this guy's got to be God or something, or from God at least, or whatever." And I'm like, "Whoa, I don't want to be close to that." So, and they began glorifying God. So they're praising God for this great miracle. A great prophet has risen among us. So we get two versions here, or two things. Now, I'm sure there were all kinds of other comments being made. Isn't that amazing? Wow, look at that. What a blessing for his mother. Whatever. But two things are pointed out, or two aspects are recorded here for us. One, great prophet, the other, God himself. And this kind of gives us an idea of the mindset of the Jews at this period in their history. So they see what is obviously a great miracle, something that only God could do. And a sizable portion, let's say half, just for fun, half of them say, this is a great prophet. Like, Elijah, Jeremiah, Isaiah, somebody like that, okay? So that's one reaction. This is a great prophet. Other people go further. And other people say, no, this is not just a prophet. This is God himself. God has come and visited his people. So they're thinking in the sphere of Messiah. They're thinking in Son of God, Son of Man kind of thing. They're thinking So these are the people that are kind of waiting for the Messiah. They know that it's about the right time. They know that this is what's going to come about this time. And maybe they've heard a lot about Jesus by now. And we're not told which crowd does which. Remember, Jesus has got 1,000 people with him. And there's a couple hundred coming out of the village. We're not told that the village crowd says one thing and the crowd with Jesus says another. Would make sense though, wouldn't it? Would kind of make sense if the crowd with Jesus were the ones who were saying, this is God, and the crowd from the village, who's not been hanging around with Jesus, but sees the same thing, they say, oh, great prophet, right? That makes sense. And maybe that's the meaning here. Maybe that's the reason why Luke only records 2 comments instead of, like you said before, those other comments that could be made. And so the report then went around all over the Judea and the surrounding district. Now, Nain, as our notes are going to tell us here in a minute, is not in Judea. So what Luke is saying here is that this story of raising from the dead made it all the way to Judea, which, of course, and the only way it's going to get to Judea is go through Jerusalem. Okay? So obviously people in Jerusalem are going to hear this. Let's look at the notes. As I say here, Nain is located about 20 miles south of Capernaum. So we get our other map out here. So Capernaum, remember, is up here at the top of the Sea of Galilee. And so Nain is about 20 miles away, probably not quite halfway between the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean. So right around in here somewhere. Luke is the only writer to record this incident. Here's another example of God, giving certain information to Matthew, certain information to Mark, certain information to Luke, and certain information to John, and certain information to all 4. But this is a case where Luke is the only one who records this particular happening. The burial grounds were located outside the city. To the Jews, the death of an only child represented an extreme sorrow. The sorrow in this case was increased because the mother was a widow and dependent on her son for support. Remember, women in general, unless you were royalty or unless your husband had left you a business of some kind, women in general did not have jobs. And so they were supported almost entirely, in almost every case, they were supported entirely by their husbands or their husband's family, say brothers maybe, or their male children. Okay, that was their only means. 95% of women in the Middle East, in Palestine, 95% of them had to be supported by a husband or brother or son. Okay, that was just the way it was, So the Mideastern custom called for people to shriek and scream when they weep for the dead. You remember this with the Jairus' daughter again, how professional mourners had been hired. And that was quite a job, by the way. That was a pretty good gig. If you were good at it, and there were groups, say a couple flute players, maybe a drummer, maybe a harpist, some kind, and maybe 2 or 3 women. Women were specially needed for the screaming, the mourning, the yelling. You still see it if you watch the news once in a while and some guy over in Palestine somewhere, Arab or whatever, has been killed, and you see him. The men are always shooting off their rifles, of course, and the women are always yelling. That's their thing. That's been the thing long before Jesus' day. Goes all the way back beyond the days of Abraham, probably all the way back, who knows, further all the way back to Noah for all we know. Just always been a thing. Always, 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 always. They make a big commotion, huge big commotion. The Jews rarely use a coffin in our sense of the word, but usually carry the body on an open pallet. And as I say, also spelled B-I-E-R there, beer. When Jesus touched the rear, the bearers stood still. They were shocked. Nobody would do this normally. You just wouldn't. The son rose and began to speak. Jesus presented the son to his mother. The people knew they were in the presence of a great man of God. They were yet to realize that he was the actual Son of God, at least the people from the town. I don't know that you can say that about the apostles and disciples. Maybe some of the disciples not yet quite convinced, but the apostles, I think, were by this time. Remember that no dead man had been raised since the time of Elisha, so this indeed was a rare event. Remember also that Jesus had forbidden them to talk about the previous resurrection. Okay? Don't tell anybody about this. This time he does not do that. And this is another kind of turning point in Jesus' ministry. Up to this point, after the first couple of miracles, Jesus doesn't say anything one way or another about them. But then after them, after the turning of water into wine and the healing of the centurion's servant, and I think maybe one other one, after that, Jesus almost every time then, when he's healing the blind man, the deaf person, the leper, and he's telling them, don't tell anybody else. Don't tell anybody else. Don't tell anybody else. Because after those first couple of miracles, that's the only reason people were coming to see Jesus. They weren't really coming to listen to the word. They were just coming to get healed. And while he doesn't turn them away, he wants them to come for another reason. He wants them to be there for hearing the word. But now he's kind of reached an apex in his ministry. And very soon now, after this, we're going to see people start falling away, and we're going to see some troubles come to his ministry and whatever. So at this point, he's pretty famous, and people are coming to him all the time. And so he doesn't stop entirely telling people not to say anything, but he doesn't do it every single time now. And this is a case where he doesn't tell people, don't say anything. So it does spread. And this is an amazing thing. Time of Elisha. What are we talking? How far back are we going here? That little timeline in your head again. Okay. Oh, come on, you guys. Sure it does.
No, it's long gone. We're glad you don't test us.
Right? Hey, here's Jesus. How far back to Babylonian captivity? 500 years, right? 586, they get taken off to captivity. 517, they come back, right? Go back another 500 years, King David. Right? In between King David and Babylonian captivity, you've got the divided kingdom, northern and southern. Elisha and Elijah were prophets during that time, the divided kingdom. They mostly worked in the northern kingdom, although they did do some work in the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom is hauled off into captivity, 722, by Assyria, disappears. So it had to be before 722. So go back, let's say, another 100 years. Go back into the 800s. Northern kingdom lasted about 300 years. Southern kingdom lasted almost 500, 400 or something. So say you would be safe to say Elisha is right around, 800 before Jesus, maybe 825, 850, somewhere around in there. So it had been certainly 800 years, maybe longer, 800 years since anybody had been raised from the dead. It was a big deal, okay? Huge. People were real excited about it. This is indeed a rare event. The news of the miracle spread to Judea. It seems that what followed, that even John the Baptizer heard of it while he was in prison. That kind of, the reason I say that is because what's going to be coming up next here. Again, here is Galilee up in here. Right? Nain is in the middle between the Mediterranean and the Sea of Galilee. Jerusalem is way down here. And Jerusalem's at the very top northern edge of Judah or Judea. Okay? So Judea goes all the way down into here. All the way down into the desert called the Negev. Right? So, and this is Gaza. Gaza's right here. So this is a big deal. This miracle makes its way from way up here in the north of Israel all the way down throughout the territory of Judea. That's a lot of people. We're not even talking now tens of thousands. We're talking hundreds of thousands of people are hearing about this. So this is, again, this is one of the big turning points in Jesus' ministry. Questions before we go on? Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Why is the word coffin used if it was a pallet?
That's a good idea. Good question. I think because the NASB people, a lot of times, they have choices, frankly. I mean, coffin's not wrong. I mean, coffin is what? It's a container for the dead, right?
Yeah, it's enclosed, and that's what I visualize.
Yeah, that's what you visualize, yeah. But it doesn't have to be. I think the NSB people just wanted everybody to get the idea that this person is for sure dead, that the body has been prepared for burial, and that it's on the way to burial. That's only. I don't know. None of my commentators, none of my books that I have that comment on this, none of them give any explanation why certain translations use the word coffin. The Greek word certainly doesn't mean coffin, not in the Western sense. So I don't know. It's one of those mysteries of translation. Can't answer it.
What got me wondering here now, since you mentioned it and everything like that is, all right, so if a person's laying on a pallet
Mm-hmm.
at the tabletop,
Yeah.
and, how, when is he laid to rest? I mean, they just wrap him apparently.
Yeah, wrap them. Uh-huh.
Okay, but based on that, rodents would get to him, it seems. And
No.
That's why I would prefer to have a closed coffin.
No. One of two things is going to happen. Either the graves are very shallow. I would say the average grave in Palestine in the ground would be no more than 3 feet. Huh? 24 inches, yeah, 2-3 feet, max. Okay, the ground is incredibly hard, very hard digging. There are no, for lack of a better word, there are no metal shovels. There are no excavators. The shovels are wooden, or hardened wood, but still very difficult to dig in. Okay, cemeteries would never ever be put into what we would call fertile ground. That would be a huge waste because there wasn't a lot of fertile ground. There's not a lot of fertile ground in Palestine. There's a lot of hills, a lot of rocks, a lot of gravel pits. Fertile ground is hard to come by, and you're not going to use it to put dead people in. So the cemeteries, if they weren't caves, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Cemeteries, if they weren't caves, were on hilly ground, very rocky, very hard to dig in, so you're not going to dig very deep. And then basically you're going to put the body down, It's going to still have the cover on it, the covering, the cloth covering, and then you're going to pile rocks on it so the animals can't get to it. Now, of course, the little mice will get in there. No big deal. But the wolves, the coyotes, whatever, they're not going to get in and they're not going to be able to move. You're going to use stones big enough that the wild dogs are not going to be able to dig it up. Okay. The other way of burial is in caves, of course. Like, Jesus was put in a tomb. And that was the other way. And there are tomb sites, burial sites, all over Israel, all over the place. And in that case, you would take the body. So you would have a cave. Okay, you would have a cave, and inside the cave, okay, the cave, and sometimes it had a seal on it, like Jesus, Nicodemus, because that was but a lot of times these were pretty good size. They were fairly large. You could walk in standing up, okay, and along the sides, okay, and in the back, let's say, would be this indentation, okay, would be an indentation you would slide the body in, okay, so it would be a little area dug out. All the sides would have these, and there would be maybe 4, 5, 6 high, okay, all the way up to the top, okay. And then after the body was there for a year, it's very dry, of course, there, and it's very hot most of the year, and it's dry and hot, and so after about a year, you would go in there, and they would be disintegrated by that time, and you would collect the bones, right? And clean out the spot for the next body. Okay? Kind of like warm bunking on submarines.
They do in New Orleans also.
Right. Okay?
Area,
That's like in Indonesia.
Yes. And Hong Kong, they do that. Shanghai, they do that. Singapore, they do that. They have to because there's not enough room.
They gather the bones, put them in a
Box.
and give them to the family.
Right. And the box is called an ossuary. And you take that bone, or people just call it a bone box. And you take that bone, you make that home, and you do with it like people do with cremation urns. You set it up on a counter, there's Uncle Charlie, or whatever. So, yeah. Now, in Hong Kong, I don't know about other places, but I do know for sure in Hong Kong that at the top of these, they're not caves, obviously, they're sepulchres, but there's a shelf, and people put these boxes on the shelf, and they don't take them home necessarily. You just put them up there, and they have, family name on them or whatever like that, and they leave them there. And then there's some places in Palestine that they did that too. As a matter of fact, a very famous case, about 20 years ago, there was a famous case where they supposedly found the bone box of Jesus' brother James. And it said on it, it was written on it, this is the ossuary or the bone box of James, the brother of Jesus. Now, ever since they found that, it's been controversial whether or not it was authentic or not. I don't know if there's been any proof one way or another to say one way or another, but it was a very famous case. And in Egypt, you find them too sometimes, these bone boxes.
I find it strange, they never mentioned the last name.
Well, no, sometimes they do, but then it's always like in James. In this case, it's James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It's just same, right? Because last names weren't a big deal. Yeah.
It kind of struck me when you're talking about Jerusalem being down at the bottom. And did you say that this was the first time that Jesus didn't say, or did say that he didn't say not to tell him?
Not the first time, no, because the early miracles, like turning water into wine, he didn't say that. And I think the miracle after that, I can't remember which one it was right off the top of my head, but I think the next one after that, I don't think he said it. I think he said it maybe after that, but, or feeding the 5,000, I don't think he said it.
Maybe part of it is he knew the information needed to get down to Jerusalem.
Well, I'm sure he wanted it to get to John, at least. And John is in prison at Macarius, and Macarius, it's not on this map, Macarius, I think, is down here. It's near the Dead Sea. So yeah, I think he probably wanted that information to get that far at least. Now, she mentioned about coffin. Let me see what the different translations have to say here and see if they come up with something better. 14, okay, 14. Let's look at 14. 14. And he came and touched the bier, that's King James. NASB says coffin. Beck says coffin. That's it. So bier and coffin is the only two choices that we have here, which is weird. Anything else on this section? Now we have time. Let's go to the next one. Next section, John's inquiry and Christ's answer that I decided just to continue. It's also in Matthew, which we will discuss a little bit of, but for different information. But in Luke 7, that is continued now right after this. So let's read down to about 23 to begin with. The disciples of John reported to him, John, about all these things. Summoning two of his disciples, John sent them to the Lord, saying, "Are you the expected one?" And again, that could be translated Messiah. Or should we look for someone else? When the men came to him, that is, they came to Jesus, they said, "John the Baptist has sent us to you to ask, are you the expected one, or do we look for someone else?" At that very time, he cured many people of diseases and afflictions and evil spirits, and he gave sight to many who were blind. So when these disciples of John come to Jesus, this is taking many days. How many days it takes for the miracle to get from Nain area down to the Dead Sea? Who knows? It's going word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth, person to person as people are traveling. Might take a week, might take 2 weeks, who knows? It's going to take a while. John has to hear it. Then John has to get a message. He's in prison. He has to get a message out somehow to a couple of his followers. They have to respond, go to the prison, talk to John. John tells them what he wants them to do. Then they have to leave the prison, and then they have to get ready for a long journey. And then they have to go up to Galilee. And that's a 2 or 3 day walk. That's making good time. If you're kind of leisurely about it, may even take 4 or 5 days. So we're talking, I think at the very least, 3 weeks from the miracle of raising the dead man to the people coming from John the Baptizer. 3 weeks, probably longer, but at the very least, 3 weeks. It's going to take that long for that to happen, right? Now, in the meantime, Jesus has stayed in that region up there in Galilee. And Luke records here that he's doing all kinds of miracles, just healing people in droves. Some of the other gospel writers talk about this type of occasion, and they say the people came all day long, all day long, all day long, all day long. So we're talking day after day after day after day. People probably came from 100 miles away, some of them, in order to get healed of their blindness, or healed of deafness, or healed of lameness, or healed of leprosy, or healed of who knows what. Okay, who knows? I don't know. Did they bring dead people? It could be. I don't know. We're not told. Maybe we would be told that. I don't know. But anyway, so this is going on for a long time. One of the interesting things about The Chosen, which I've talked about a couple of times, that you find you can watch on television, they try very hard to be very accurate and everything. I kind of got a weird impression about that because they showed one of these occasions, and the narrator said, and people were bringing their sick and whatever to Jesus, and he was healing them. And it showed Jesus kind of in a tent, almost like a booth, all right? And people were being led in by the apostles, kind of like one at a time or two at a time, whatever. And Jesus healing them. And then Jesus would come out of the booth once in a while, and I had to get something to eat, or get something to drink. And he would come out of the tent, and he would be like, he was just exhausted, like he was just beat to death, And I'm trying to decide, is that really a good way to portray that? Okay, he's 100% human being. But what human energy is being used? Yeah, no human energy is being used. No human effort is being used in healing. And we've seen these healings before up to this point, and we know that these healings are done from a distance. They're done with just a touch, or they're done with a word and nothing else. Right? We've seen that so far. We've seen those kinds of things, right? And without any exertion on Jesus' part at all. So I don't understand why they decided to do that, why they decided to show Jesus at the end of the day after healing all day being absolutely worn to a frazzle. I think that's very disingenuous. I think that's very inaccurate, okay? But I guess they wanted to show, hey, takes a lot out of God to do that stuff. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, maybe they're thinking, well, he's man, so he's going to be wore out.
Well, I guess just,
But he's not man.
well, he is man.
Man, but not,
He gets tired. He sleeps in a boat, So I don't know. It's just one of those things that when I first saw it, I was watching that episode, and I just went, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. Anyway, let's keep going. The reason that Luke says this, I think, is to set up what Jesus is going to answer to the disciples of John. Evil afflictions, evil spirits, gave sight to many who were blind, so on and so forth. Okay, so he's doing all kinds of miracles, just, exorcisms, if you will, and all kinds of stuff. And so Jesus answered and said to them, those two from John, go and report to John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the gospel. That's why I say, did people bring their dead to him? I don't know. Is he just talking about the miracle before with the young man from Nain, or is he making a general comment here about, yeah, I'm raising the dead on a regular basis? I don't know. Blessed is he who does not take offense at me. Meaning just that here this Messiah has shown himself to be this poor guy from Nazareth, this carpenter's son from Nazareth, and not to be offended at that, not to be offended at the mode that God chose to have the Messiah take. Verse, keep reading. When the messengers of John had left, he began to speak to the crowds about John. What did you go out to the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind. What did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing. Those who are splendidly clothed and live in luxury are found in royal palaces. But what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes. I say to you, and one that is more than a prophet, this is one about whom it has been written, behold, I send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you. I say to you, among those born of women, there is no one greater than John. Yet he who is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. When all the people and the tax collectors heard this, They acknowledge God's justice, having been baptized with the baptism of John. Now, notice here, this is especially interesting. You've got all these people and these tax collectors, and Luke says these people who are following Jesus and have brought these people for these miracles, they have all been baptized by John. Now that's kind of interesting. So it's clear that John's message, repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand, had a great effect. And he baptized thousands and thousands of people. And now those people, and probably others, but at least those people are now coming to Jesus. And the tax collectors, and the people here in tax collectors, when they're put together like that, it means the commoners. Okay? So the commoners, they acknowledge God's justice. Why? Now, why? This is another one of those times where the Bible speaks of justice that I think very often is misunderstood by most Bible readers. God's justice. I mean, what do you see here? What do you see here? You see a lot of miracles. You see a lot of the blind being healed, right? You see the poor being helped. You see the cripples being healed. You see, the deaf being healed, the dead being raised. You see the lepers being healed. What does all that have to do with justice? What is this? And this is not the only time that this comes up. It comes up numerous other times during Jesus' ministry, either said by Jesus himself or said by those who are watching him and commenting. And they talk about justice. What does the gospel have to do with justice? You ever thought that? Ever wondered that? Why? What in the world does the gospel and Jesus' story have to do with justice? Why do these people say that? They acknowledged God's justice because they were baptized with the baptism of John. What does one thing have to do with the other? Anybody? What do you think? Ever occurred to you while you're reading this? Or any of those other passages where justice comes up?
Well,
Okay.
and now they're getting the gospel is replacing. the law.
Okay. So that's my question. Since they're hearing the gospel and since they're responding to the gospel, okay, repent for the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent for the Messiah has come, basically. Okay, the Messiah has come. That's the chosen one. That's the one who removes sin. That's the one who pays for sin, and so on and so forth. They acknowledge God's justice. Well, what's another word for justice? What's another word? Synonym. Give me a synonym for justice. Truth, justice, and the American way. Yeah, Superman. All right. What's a synonym for justice? How about fair? Fairness. Right? How about impartial? Huh? So again, what does this have to do with the gospel and with Jesus? All right.
The Lord was put to death based on justice and not gospel.
What?
That he was put to death based on justice, not gospel, but yet On the same token,
Okay, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. Okay, you know what? You're on the right track. Okay, up to this point, all right, the people have been given the law of Moses. And of course, the Pharisees have added many more laws to it. We'll talk about them in a minute. But they understand, and they are, for the most part, even the best believers probably among them are a little confused. They think that, okay, they go to the temple, they make their sacrifices, they go 5 times a year to Jerusalem, they worship at the temple, they bring their animals, they do this, they do that. They're told by the Pharisees, of course, to keep various laws on the Sabbath and this and that, okay? So, justice. So what's fair? What's fair is eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, right? That's basically the law of Moses, isn't it? The law of Moses is, God says, you did this, you go to the temple, you give up your sacrificial animal, you spread blood all over the place, like we're talking about on Sundays at the tabernacle and temple, and you take care of that. You do that, you go and you take care of it. Okay, you better take care of it. That's all right. That's what they've been preached at from the time of Moses to Jesus. That's 1,500 years. That's 1,000 years, 1,500 years. 1,500 years. Now, granted, they should have known, and they were told, that these things are symbols of what the Messiah is going to do. The Messiah is going to take the place of all of these sacrifices. It's going to perfect them or fulfill them. Okay, so they don't need to be done anymore. And that it wasn't really the blood of the animal or the going and doing the sacrifice that was actually giving them forgiveness or paying for their sins. It was the sacrifice of Jesus that was going to happen 1,500 years into the future. Okay? But it's still fairness, okay? It's still, okay? It's still, think of it this way, sin for sin, okay? So cross out sin for sin, sin for sin. It's one for one, okay? That is fair, isn't it? 1 for 1. Okay? Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, right? 1 for 1. Okay, you do this, this happens. You do this, you have to make up for it for that. Right? You go 20 miles over the speed limit, you pay $100. Okay? Those are, in law, those are equals. Okay? One cancels out the other. Okay? Your insurance, you get so many points on your license, your insurance goes up so much, right? Okay? 1 for 1. Okay? All right. So the people, when they say that, when Luke records that, what he's saying is that people are acknowledging this idea of, okay, now we have the Messiah, we have the representative of us. We have the guy, the Messiah, the anointed one, who is supposed to take our place. He is the one who crushes the serpent's power, who crushes the serpent's head, who crushes the serpent, the devil's authority. Okay, and how does he do that? Because as long as we owe God, then the devil has something to hang over us. Okay? The devil has something to hang over us. Right? As long as you haven't paid off your mortgage, the bank has something to hang over you. They can say, hey, you better pay your interest rate, you better pay whatever we tell you, you better do, and you better keep your house in good repair, right? It's like car insurance, right? If you have comprehensive car insurance, right, and your car is not paid off, right, you have a what? A lien. Follow me? You got a lien on your car. and you have comprehensive insurance, and if you have a lien, you'll have to have comprehensive, usually, not every, but usually. Usually the car company, the insurance company will insist that you have comprehensive insurance, okay? Why? Well, because you get into an accident, especially if it's your fault, okay? You mess up the car, it ain't your car yet. It belongs to the bank or whatever company loaned you the money for the car, right? Whether it was Chrysler or, Chevrolet or whoever it was, GM Financial, okay? GM Financial, if you rip the bumper off of your car and it's your fault, okay, GM Financial is going to want you to replace that bumper and make it look exactly as it did before when it still owns the car. Got it?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So the devil, you see, the devil has something over you. Ha ha. You lied, you stole, you cheated, you cussed, you whatever. You did this. Ha ha. See? And so justice would mean that the devil can take that out of you. He can take his pound of flesh, you see. All right? And that's the way the people have been living. They've been living this way like they have to make up for all this sin themselves, and they have to do this. Now, of course, they should have known better. They should have known better, but most of them did not. Maybe a few did, but most of them did not. They didn't get it. Okay? So now they're understanding. Here comes the substitute. Here comes the Redeemer. Here comes the Savior, you see, okay, who's going to take that punishment, who's going to be sacrificed in my place, the atonement, and he's going to do that one for one. But because, of course, he's God, he's not just one for one. He's Christ one for billions and billions and billions. Because he's God too, not just you. He's 100% human, but he's 100% God. Okay? Which is why he has to be both. See? So when you see that word justice, and you see either an apostle is commenting on it or using it, or a gospel writer is using it, or the people are saying it, okay? This is what they're understanding, or they're coming to understand. This is what they're getting. They're understanding, they're acknowledging God's justice. God is finally going to make everything fair and equitable. And I don't have to do it. I'm off the hook. Okay, that's the understanding here. Oh, we went past time.
Jesus also was the Pharisees tried to say blasphemy.
Well, yeah,
And the punishment for that was death, was it not?
yeah, you're right. You're
That's where the justice comes in.
All right, we'll pick it up at verse 30 next time, and we'll finish this section on Jesus and John. All right. You're excused.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is cold out there. You're right. Says it's 55.
But the wind chill is.
Oh, the wind chill is 35. Is that right? No, 52. Sorry.
Oh, you do have a jacket.
I heard somebody driving off, and I have a feeling it was the people that have 3 or 4 dogs.
Yeah.
That like to bark all the time,
Yeah.
and they let the dogs out before they left. So it was
Too much coffee.
Oh, I know, that'll get you. Every once in a while.